Hey, welcome to the show, Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. That's right, I'm Arif Halaby, along with a special guest. You'll get to meet her in just a second. Thanks for listening to the show today, Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. What does that mean? It's talking about you and your life, helping you get out of debt, of course, manage money, plan for your retirement, live a healthy and a happy retirement. And for so many people, they forget that retirement is not just about accumulating money and then sitting in a bunker, if you will, waiting to pass away. It's about living. And we want to talk about living a financially healthy life. And sometimes, folks, that comes to be with things like Social Security and pensions. So we're going to get into a real life story today. And joining me today is Paula Bro. Paula is a longtime client, been with us for many, many years. I don't know how many years, maybe
11.
Yeah, how many?
11.
11? That's
Yes.
it? I was going to say 15, so quite a bit longer, I thought. Paula is also somebody who was taking care of her mother, who has recently passed away. And we want to talk about Social Security, some of the things that happen when you take Social Security. We'll get into a few different pieces here, but partly think of it like this. As a retiree, do I receive my spousal benefits if one of you pass away? So think of it this way. With Social Security, if you're receiving your benefits and you have a husband or a wife and they're receiving benefits, when one of them passes away, the higher of the Social Security benefits continues, but the lower goes away. Now, when is that a big problem? It's a big problem when both of you are earning the same amount of Social Security. So in other words, if you're both earning $2,000 a month, 50% of your income goes away. However, if one is $2,800 a month and another one is $600 a month, well, you're not going to get as much of a disparity. You're going to lose a smaller amount. Or if it's, let's say, $2,800 and $1,200, maybe that's a closer example. And so that will mean that you're going to certainly lose the lower Social Security amount, but the financial impact is a little bit less percentage-wise. But what happens when somebody is receiving Social Security and they pass away within the month? Well, Paula, tell us a little bit about your story with your mom, and this is kind of important too.
My mom passed away on March 28th. She was an Alzheimer's patient for 7 years. We chose to keep her at home. That was her choice, and we managed to do it. I'm one of 5 siblings, and so fortunately, we have been able to, amongst the 5 of us, figure out a schedule to keep Mom at home and be together. And it worked. One thing we did need to do was deal with Social Security to try to get her some Medi-Cal.
Medi-Cal is the California version of Medicare,
Right.
And Paula, just for your information, lives outside of California.
So here in California, Medi-Cal, it was an arduous process. I have had many dealings with federal agencies, and at this time, we decided to employ an advocate to help us get there quicker. And even that took over a year. There were many, many trips along the way and stumbles and falls, and the ultimate end here is that we were able to have her approved. She became eligible for Social Security Medi-Cal 2 weeks before she passed.
Now, folks, think of it this way. See, Medicare is across the United States, but in certain states there's different branding, let's call it that. The federal government says, here's a bunch of dollars, state, do with it as you will. So each state has certain liberties that they can take and create a program that best fits the needs of their population. In California, it's called Medi-Cal. It's designed for folks that are in the lower income. Well, Paula's mom had basically spent through her life savings, like a lot of people will when they're in their late 90s, and in doing so, was eligible to receive Medi-Cal. That Medi-Cal provision, though, that she was entitled to as a taxpayer for nearly a century took nearly a year?
A year.
You guys do not understand. You still have to eat dinner in that year. You still have to go see a doctor. You still have to buy your medication. What a messed up system that says we are okay with allowing a senior citizen who's lived on this earth for a century and raised many children and good citizens, people that are contributors to society, and yet we're going to thank them by doing this. So a little bit perturbed, if you will, about this. I'm not a fan of it. So tell me about the Social Security. Now, Social Security is a payment system that is different than Medi-Cal. It's not means tested.
Exactly.
So you can be Donald Trump, you could be Warren Buffett, you can be Hillary Clinton, who makes $200 million, or $200,000 a speech, or Donald Trump, who's worth billions, and still apply for Social Security and receive it if you wanted to. Okay, so if you put into it, you have to be somebody who's put into it. Means tested means it doesn't matter about your income. Okay, so that's the Social Security side. So your mom was eligible for Social Security.
Exactly.
Your dad had worked.
Exactly.
In fact, your dad was a veteran.
Yes.
We thank him for his service.
Yes.
A little bit of a hero. One day we'll hear his story, I think. He's a hero. Tell me what happened.
My mother was receiving $1,230 a month automatically deposited into her account.
So $1,230. Okay.
And that's into her account every third of the month. And my mother, as I mentioned, died on the 28th, and I did not hear from Social Security. And just before her services, I went to the bank to withdraw money for the organist and the few things we need there.
Sure.
And there was no money. I had learned that Social Security had rescinded the payment. Even though my mother died on the 28th, they had rescinded the payment, had not contacted us at all, and in the meantime, we had bounced some payments.
So here's what happens. If you're alive and you live and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you collect a check, but if you pass away within the month, even though you had to pay your rent or your mortgage or your taxes, your food, your electric bill, all of the things that, I don't mean, you're world travelers and you bought a fancy watch or something. I mean, your expenses. And what Social Security did is they went and took the money back from her account, even though she had bills that were, 28 days old. Mm-hmm. Although, what do you have to die on the end of each month in order to break even or something? Or
at
the first of the month?
Die at the first of the month.
Yeah.
Even if she had died at a quarter to midnight on the last day of the month, there was no compensation, there was no prorating, there was nothing. It was gone. We had paid her bills and now they were all bouncing.
Guys, this is important for you to know if you're trying to build a plan where Social Security is a big part of your retirement. And not just of yours. Remember how I mentioned that a husband and wife would both receive Social Security, right? Well, what are they going to take back if the spouse passes away on the 3rd or the 10th or the 28th of the month? They're going to take back not the higher one, they'll take back the lower one. If they're both $2,000 a month, what do they take out of your account? $2,000. This isn't small money. These are big dollars. Even though somebody was alive most of that month, nearly all of that month, 99% of that month, it doesn't matter. So one, I want you to write your congressman or congresswoman. I want you to make sure that they have an understanding. Write your senators, especially now they're all running for office, right? Today is a big election day. This is a time to get out there and make sure they understand, to hear your voice about this being an issue. That's the only way it's going to be solved, in my opinion, is for somebody to go through and say, really? Does that make sense? Because there's a common sense component to this that I want us to pay attention to. Paula, what else happened with the veterans benefits? Because as we mentioned, your father was a veteran. And tell us a little bit about his service. That's important first.
Thank you for asking. My dad was in the Army. He served in World War II, and he saw active duty, although he was not an infantryman. But he did see active duty, and he was in Manila and in Alaska most of the time.
Okay.
He was honorably discharged. And when my mother became infirm, I should mention my father passed in 1979. When my mother became older and infirmed, we turned to the VA for aid and attendance, to which she was completely entitled based on my dad's service.
So here's the aid and attendance pension. There are 3 different pensions that you can receive as a veteran, or your spouse if you're married upon the time at the time upon your passing. Okay, if you're divorced and then you die, your spouse is not entitled to it under the current situation and the current laws. But if you're still married and the veteran passes away, the spouse is also entitled. Of those 3 different pensions, I just want to address the one for the moment, which is aid and attendance. That means it's very similar to like a long-term care benefit. if you can't walk, if it's difficult to feed yourself, to get up out of bed, to use a restroom, what we call activities of daily living. If it's difficult or you need assistance to do a couple of those things, and then you would seek an aid and attendance pension, provided that the veteran served at least 90 days in the military, with one of those days being during a time of conflict that Congress has decided is a conflict, and it's listed on the website. You can go through veteranaid.org, veteranaid.org. That is a nonprofit. It's a third party, but I love the organization. They're very helpful. veteranaid.org. Okay. That one day has to be during this time of conflict, and here's the caveat: they have to have been honorably discharged. Okay, a lot of guys back then, may have not always considered that as an important part of their exit strategy, but in this case, your father met all of those.
Exactly.
Okay, so wonderful.
Well, it was another long odyssey to get those benefits. And as a matter of fact, I would mention that a few years prior to my mother's need, we had checked with the veterans, actually gone there with an appointment and asked what was available in her future, and they told us nothing. And actually, Arif, it was you who mentioned to us to check out aid and attendance after they had denied knowledge of any program. And then thereby it was about 18 months before we got any help. And it was also a system fraught with issues.
18 months.
18 months, and we did receive our benefits, and they did a field check at my mother's home and a field check of me, as I am her fiduciary, and everything went ahead smoothly. And then all of a sudden there were no benefits, and that was because they said that their second field visit indicated that she did not need that much, and I needed to pay them back $10,000.
Oh my gosh.
I would mention, there was no second field visit, and then we started a series of appeals, and
they basically said, oops, we didn't do a second field visit?
They never acknowledged that. I was still in appeals when my mother died.
It's almost like it's a game that they want you to jump through hoops, get through a system, and here is a lady in her late 90s who, might I add, has an amazing history. Look, if you live, I think, 50 years on this planet, you've got a million stories. But by being on this planet for nearly a century and growing up, not in California,
She grew up in Louisiana.
Louisiana. Folks, what a history. Imagine being a teenager in World War I and being in, I guess, maybe in her 30s or 40s in World War II. I mean, really understanding and seeing that life is a part of many, many historical events. And the way we thank them is we say, show up at this time, stand in line, we're going to be late. And look, I love my friends that work for government agencies. We have a lot of clients that work for, and the individual is not always at fault. Sometimes they are. But the system is not set up. It's so bloated. There are so many people trying to do the same thing. And there's no accountability, right? If I worked at a car dealership and I didn't produce X amount of cars, sold X amount of cars, or process the paperwork, if I didn't do that efficiently, they would fire me. Well, what is the accountability? I mean, look, we just saw, the IRS took 3 years to release their hit list, the 400 plus people on the hit list, which were conservative Tea Party folks. Agree with them or not, look, government is not a weapon. We're not Venezuela or Cuba, right? Government is supposed to be a tool. And the Veterans Association is designed to serve our veterans and their families. Folks, I want you to use today's election day to make sure the issues that matter to you, and if these, Social Security and the veterans issues, matter to you, I want you to go out, write letters, go to the town hall meetings, be respectful, right? Remember, our congresspeople and senators and state senators and state legislators, they're human beings. They have families, they have problems, they have issues, like all of us. But be forthright. Don't sugarcoat things, and be very diligent. Don't stop. Make sure they understand that this matters to you and that you're a voter, and that you're going to use whatever's in your power, whether it's social media, whether it's an email blast, whether it's a sign on the corner, to make sure that, one, our veterans are taken care of, and number two, our senior citizens that deserve, that earned, Social Security. I'm not talking about folks that are 38 years old, and we all get hurt. I've been hurt, who feel like they can't work at a job. Look, get up and go to work, right? If you're, I've been hurt. We've all been there. You take a time off, that's great, but you're not done the rest of your life at 41 or 47 years old. And get up. Don't draw on that Social Security. You're taking from those that are 80 and 90 years old. So work very hard at that. Make sure you reach out to those folks. We're going to continue in just a minute as we take a break with another guest here in just a minute. And I want to make sure you understand, Miss Paula, that we are very proud to have your father and mother as clients, your mother specifically, but to have them as part of our society and what they've done to make America great. Your mom is an amazing person, what she did and how she raised you guys, and it was an honor and a privilege in my life to have known her.
Thank you for saying that. I'm quite proud of my parents and my family. We're lucky people.
You sure are.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we'll continue just a minute right here on your place for news, talk, and information. I'm Arif Halaby on AM 1220 KHTS.